Jump in.
Okay, so I guess I should have given Kobe a heads up on this. We could have done this better, but because we need a red carpet for this.
A red what?
A red carpet, because this
Oh,
is
check with me.
this is given the word about where people are. This is the world premiere of this talk. You heard it here first. Now, what that means is it's a little rough. But we have a chapter in the 25 skills about handling difficult people. But, and I'll talk about some of those things, but the most important part of this is at the end. So please stay till the end. And that's where I took the cases that you sent me, and I took them seriously. They were great cases. And I feel like I'm back at the beginning of the ethics when I got those cases from the Penn State people, and it just opened my eyes about what it is that people are dealing with out there. So this is a whole new thing. And so I talked with my wife, Mary Birch, who we do everything together, and maybe we'll offer a workshop on this, so we'll see. So this is a trial run. You'll get to see what you think. Okay. The subtitle is Behaviorally, dealing with difficult people behaviorally, and you'll see why here in a second. So there are quite a few books written on this topic, and they're popular works. If you fly and you're in the bookstore at the airport, you'll see these books for business people typically, and they are about how to handle difficult people. And the first thing they like to do to catch your attention is to categorize these people. That's sort of the major function of this. So the bully, the drama queen / king, the constant complainer, the procrastinator, the temper tantrum style, and there's more. This one book has 10 of these, and then they go through and talk about all of them. And when I started, in the preparation for the 25 skills book, I interviewed behavior analysts to try to find out, tell me about skills that you think that you need to be successful in your life and as your profession and so on. And they started generating all these lists, and I started off with about 100. And I gradually whittled those down and put them into subcategories and so on, ended up with the 25. And the one that did show up very frequently was this difficult people. So that's why there's a chapter on that. But I didn't deal with it as thoroughly as I am today because I have now much more and even better input from you guys. So here's an example. Here's a book called Handling Difficult People, an operator's manual. And this is early in the book. Whoops. You really, really cannot change another person. So that's sort of their motto. Now, they obviously don't know this PhD named Jon S doesn't know anything about behavior analysis, or the quote would be, you really, really can change people. We know that we can because that's what we do. That's our profession. So in these books, and there's several of them, as I said, they have some general strategies, and I thought you might find this amusing. So the first thing they want you to know about is how did they get to be that way? So here are some observations they have. Bullies suffer from poor self-esteem. That's how those people got to be difficult. Think about the bullies that you've known, and that's the reason. Don't you feel better already? Constant complainers grew up in a household of complainers. There's a pop psychology at its best, or maybe its worst, I'm not sure. Drama queen or king grew up spoiled and overly pampered. Note to self, if you have children, don't spoil them and overly pamper them, or they will grow up to be drama queens. So see, right there, those of you with little children, you know who I'm talking to. You know not what to do. So how did they get that way? And then they want to give you some ideas about what to do. So their next best idea is avoid the person. So how do you handle difficult people? You see them coming and you go down the other hallway. or you act like you're busy, or you put your head down and like you don't hear them walking by, or whatever it is. You just avoid these people, and they have lots of good examples about how to avoid difficult people and so on. And that's actually not a bad strategy, but it's not appropriate for us because we're behavior analysts. See, if you were something else, then you could just avoid the problem, but you're behavior analysts, and we don't avoid problems, we tackle them. Tackling a problem is called conflict, and what do we think about conflict? We love conflict. I tell people you have to learn to embrace conflict, because how are you going to fix things if you don't embrace it and work on it and get close? So then another strategy, if you can't avoid the person, is you could make smart comments. I think it really meant to say smart aleck comments. So the person who is sort of bombastic and making these big statements, you just say, "I'm sorry, did you say something?" Clearly showing them that you have very little interest in what they say and you're not even noticing them. Or somebody who has to be right all the time. "I know you're absolutely right. Why do I even bother?" That's supposed to be disarming or something, I suppose. I don't know. Or the needy person. "What's the real reason you called me at 2 a.m.?" Now, I don't know how you use these. There's no rules for this. There's obviously there's no underlying theory behind it. There's no evidence for it, and so on. But occasionally, they get it right. For the drama queen, for example. "I enjoyed being with you today. It was low-key and relaxed, and I liked that." Whoa, I saw that, and it's really highlighted in my book. I've got that circled because it is, yay, DRO. Now, I think you could probably take these books and rework them and just put the behavior principles in there, and they might even be functional, but then people would have to know what DRO meant, and they'd have to go to school and become a behavior analyst. And that's not ever going to happen. I mentioned in the last hour, ethics is difficult. If it was easy, everybody would be ethical. If it was easy to understand human behavior, everybody would be a behavior analyst. But of course, obviously, everybody is not. Now, here's another one. This book that comes out of Harvard Business School. You'd think they would know a lot about this. Define a problem as a person, and you're in trouble. Define it as a behavior, and you can actually do something about that. That's a chapter within this book, a little paperback book. And so they got that right. But then, if you read subsequent to that, you say, yes, we're onto something, and then it kind of fizzles out because they really don't have any good examples of anything to do with that. Here's some people that you might have run into: argumentative people, passive-aggressive people, lazy people, burned-out people, defensive people. And let me just say, I'm going to see if I can stipulate this at the beginning, that we have none of these people in this room. Can I get agreement to that? Everybody agrees? Look around you carefully. Make sure we don't have, because we're going to be talking about these people, and if they're here, it's going to be very awkward. So handling difficult behaviors is really what we're sort of about here. Our approach to this is quite different from these sort of common sense business books on this particular topic, because as behavior analysts, we want to look at the behaviors. We want to start by looking at the SDs. What are the stimuli that are setting the occasion for the behavior? And we want to know the related variables of which it might be a function. So I'm going to show you, I know everybody is familiar with and probably grew up on the ABCs, the ABC analysis, and many people attribute that to Skinner, and that's why they feel comfortable using it. I think it is dramatically oversimplified and inappropriate to use an ABC model. And I'm going to show you why here in a second, particularly with regard to these difficult people. So we start with that. We start with a graphic showing we have a person here, and you notice that that's not in the ABC analysis. A, B, C, antecedent, behavior, consequent. Where's the person? Where's the person who engages in the behavior? The person is not in the ABC analysis. That's the first fundamental flaw. I did some research on this, and in the very earliest Skinner's writings, he actually had this in here, but he didn't have it as P for person like I do. He had O for the organism. So his original proposition that never got picked up, and he didn't himself use later, was actually stimulus, organism, behavior, consequence. But I think it's good to update it. We'll call them persons instead of organisms because people don't like to be called organisms. And so, okay, so we've got a person. We know that this person who's going to engage in this difficult behavior had to be responding to some antecedent stimulus. And we know from Jack Michael about motivating operations. We used to call them EOs, establishing operations, but we call them motivating operations. We know that these are powerful variables. And we know that those powerful variables, motivation operations, directly affect the person, and that's the person, and they directly affect the behavior of the person. So motivating operation affects the deprivation level, let's say, or the aversive level of the person, and directly affects the probability that the behavior will occur. All behaviors have consequences. Even these behaviors that we don't like have consequences. And if you're going to analyze them effectively, you have to be looking for those particular consequences. What do people get out of these things they do that are difficult for us? The passive-aggressive person, what are they getting out of this particular behavior? It's easier just to label them as passive-aggressive and move on. But if you say, okay, well, that's the behavior, now why? Why is this behavior occurring? What's the stimuli? What's the motivating operation? What's going on? That's what we're here about today, is to try to analyze some of that. And then this is the rest of it. And notice that this is all missing from the ABC analysis is what happens after the consequence. That's why that model is really not adequate. It's not adequate because now we know that the consequence goes back, it strengthens the antecedent, and at the same time the consequence affects the motivational operation, actually has a temporary reduction in whatever the motivational variable was. And there's another little line, I don't have it on here because there wasn't quite enough room, but there's another little line that goes up here where it directly affects the person. The consequence, the person receives the consequence, and it strengthens the likelihood that this is going to occur in the future. So here's just an example, and we'll talk about different ones, but this is the passive-aggressive one. And in the examples that came through, it seemed like there were a few of those where the person was labeled as passive-aggressive. Passive-aggressive, which would you rather have? Somebody who is aggressive or passive-aggressive? Which one? Which one do you like better? Where's your microphone?
Who wants it?
Right over here.
Nice.
I said it's the same thing because aggression's aggression, whether it's passive or active. If you're aggressive toward a person, it's the same.
Now, if you're passive-aggressive, and the reason that the word passive is part of this is you don't see it coming. So would you have somebody who disagreed with you, would you rather have them say, I'm sorry, I just don't agree on this point. We need to discuss this further. Or would you rather have them say, and then stab you in the back on your way out? That's the passive-aggressive person, the person that becomes unpredictable as to what they're going to do. And it really irritates me personally, this is one of my pet peeves, is people who go, and in here they're going, not on your life. No way. I'd rather hear what it is and discuss it, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if they say it in the right way, I'll go, oh, okay, well, yeah, you're right. But passive-aggressive people can be very destructive in an organization. So one example of passive-aggressive is a person who refuses to take responsibility for anything that they've done. They engage in accusing other people. They don't take responsibility for themselves, so they dish it off on somebody else. Blaming other people, deflecting responsibilities. These are things that passive-aggressive people do. They can be really destructive in organizations. And there's this disconnect with what they say they'll do and what they actually do. So passive-aggressive people are people who go, okay, yeah, that's a good idea, sure, count on me. And then, no, they're not there. And not only that, but they will badmouth whatever this little project was that you were trying to get them involved with. Very destructive person to have in an organization. So we know how they got that way. They grew up in passive-aggressive families, and it was inherited. And no, that's not right. Okay. So you've got somebody like this, and you need to try to analyze it. So first thing is, what are the circumstances under which the behavior happens? That's a good place to start. I think even behavior analysts have a hard time with this because it just gets your stomach going. Somebody has done something, and you just want to strangle somebody. But you have to put on your behavior analysis hat. I think we should have hats made for everybody. You should say behavior, and you should keep it in your purse or in your briefcase. And when you get into these things, you pull it out and you put it on. You say, I'm a behavior analyst. Now, well, how do I solve this problem? And then when you're done, you take it off and put it away, because you don't want to walk around like that. But so the idea is, what are the circumstances under which the behavior occurs? You want to be able to identify what these are. So that means that you've got to have a behavior which happens more than once. So there can be a pattern that you can begin to pick up on, which means you're going to have to keep track of it. And it's sort of like taking data. It's sort of like taking a baseline. Now, it may not actually be data points, but you're going to have to kind of keep notes on this sort of thing. As a behavior analyst, I know your primary purpose is working with your clients, but your secondary purpose has to be to analyze these people around you that cause trouble. These are difficult people. Because they can wear you down and wear you out, and the next thing you know, a good person quits because of somebody that just got to them. So what other factors could be involved in this? And I think this is where we have to think about, are there motivating variables? Are there other variables that have to take into account? Not unlike the way that you would go about analyzing a case. You've got a kid who has a tantrum. The first question you'd say is, well, what are the circumstances under which this happens? And then you'd want to get some more details, like is it in the morning or the afternoon? Is it right before lunch? Is it on a demand? What exactly is that? We want to know the same thing about these difficult people. And what are some other factors? So here's the kid, and he bites occasionally. More likely to do it in the early afternoon just before a nap. So like if he got his nap instead, maybe he'd be okay. So, a nap is a variable. If you're a parent, you know about that. Meals are a variable. Overstimulation is a variable for kids. All of these things can be factors, and some of them may be similar factors for adults. My guess is if you run into one of these people and they engage in this behavior and it begins to affect you, that it's not the first time they did this. My guess is that it's the third or fourth time or the 50th time they've done it before. And the problem with that is they now have a history of this. They've got a history of engaging in the behavior, and now it's coming to you. This chicken has come to roost right on your doorstep. And now you've got to deal with it. And wouldn't you like to go back in your time machine? This is the behavior analysis time machine. You want to go back in time to the very first instance where the person engaged in this behavior, and they did it, and then they got trounced. And the person ended up saying, I'll never do this again. Now you go fast forward, and they're not a passive-aggressive person anymore. Well, sorry, no time machine. But you have to realize that there's a good chance that this isn't the first time they did this. Passive-aggressive people often do this. They go, sure, yeah, to avoid conflict, because they don't want to speak up. They don't want to have that conversation. I don't think we can allow that. I think we have to make them have the conversation. Make them go through the conflict. There are certain kinds of people that are really good that can end up passive-aggressive, and these are called people pleasers. You know anybody who's a people pleaser? They just want you to be so happy. They want you to have everything. And then when they can't, they pretend that they did. And they say that they did, but they didn't. It's like, no, you can't get away with that. That's not appropriate either. And this is a big one. And I don't know that we take this into account. If you have, in several of the examples that I read, people had cases of a teacher or a client, a parent who was the client, who were supposed to follow through on behavior programs and didn't, but said they did. And one of them even, I think I may have picked this one, one of them even looked like the parent was making up data to make it look like they did. Well, that's really a very good behavior analysis case of passive-aggressive behavior, somebody who says, oh yeah, sure, yeah, I did all that. But they obviously did not do all that. I think a key factor in that, they may be busy, maybe that's it, I think it's probably skill set. I think they don't know, they're not good enough at it that they can do it easily, and so they don't, and it's easier to make an excuse than to actually take the data or run the program. So here's the exciting part. Everybody's supposed to act excited. This is the exciting part. Yay, there you go. All right, audience participation. That's great. Okay, this is what you've been waiting for. This is the exciting part. This is, what do we have to offer? What could we bring to this field of dealing with difficult people? Well, first of all, the idea of the FA, the whole concept that we can analyze human performance. It doesn't have to be in a laboratory. It doesn't have to be in a school or a clinic. It can be in the workplace. We can analyze these behaviors, and we can begin to understand what the maintaining variables are. 2, we can bring to the fore the idea of stimulus control, the idea that if you want to be effective with people, you have to understand what are the circumstances under which this particular behavior occurs. Let's look at what the stimulus control is. And why would you want to know that? If you knew that there were certain stimuli that set the occasion for some of these behaviors, why would you want to know that? If you knew that a kid engaged in aggression whenever you made a demand, and the demand was the stimulus control, why would you want to know that? You could be prepared. Anything else? In the back, the blue.
I hate it when I get this thing. Well, you can then manipulate the environment
Yes.
in a way to make it more successful.
Yes, and how could you? What would be a good way to manipulate the environment to make it more successful?
Well, depending upon what the controlling variable was.
Now, let's say it's a demand.
Okay, so if it's a demand, you could probably, let's say if we're dealing with a child.
Yeah.
Okay.
You need to clean up your room. Kid goes bonkers.
Right, right.
That's the demand.
Okay. Well, I might want to change how that demand was
Yes.
presented.
Yes, which is?
Well, it was presented in a, I mean, if you say it just like that, I would
Yeah,
call
change
that,
it. Change it for me.
Oh, okay. Change it. And I would probably say something like, it's time to clean up your room. As soon as that's done, then
Okay.
we will.
Okay, good. And if that didn't work, then you could back down from that. And you could say, I'll help you clean up the room. Want to clean up the room? It'll be fun. So that's very unlikely to elicit an aggression response because
Right.
it doesn't even look like a demand.
Right.
It looks like fun.
Yeah.
And if you could get that going, then you could gradually get up to, hey, could you clean up your room a little bit, put a few things away because we're going to go to
Yeah,
Baskin Robbins or something.
yeah, yeah.
Am I okay to put in plugs for companies like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe they'll show up on the right
yeah, maybe
side.
we could get some advertising.
Yeah, there you
dollars
go.
or something.
Right. Should have thought about that. Product placement. Yeah. So actually, all the reinforcers that we use for people ought to be noticed. You know, we ought to be using them. Okay. So you want to know about stimulus control. So if you had this person that would have tantrums or whatever it is, now I'm an adult and a business person. Whenever you said, "All right, well, you're in charge of this," and then they go, "No, not me. I don't have time for this." Blah blah blah. Well, then you try to think of, how could I get this initiated some other way so that it doesn't? And then what you included, which was very good, here's the reinforcer for that. Thank you so much for helping with this project. That's really been good. So you begin to break away from the stimulus control of all of that. See, people don't think about that. In the same way that you have to break down any behavior in the environment for a kid, you got to do it with these people too. What about extinction? Does extinction have a role in any of this? The answer is yes, specifically for face-to-face communications. So with somebody who you're talking to, and you can be my subject. I don't know if they can see Shauna here. I'm talking to you, and you're going to be negativity on me.
You want her to have the mic?
She can have the mic.
Role play. I'm passing around the punishment.
Think of it as a reinforcer. Yes. This is an opportunity to be on TV in Vietnam and Hawaii and Poland and Spain and Iceland. And
No, I don't think that's going to work. I think that it would be better if we just sent him to timeout, because I don't think that reinforcer stuff is going to work for him. I've been extinctified.
That's what extinction looks like. It looks like no eye contact, no smiling. When people normally, do it again, and I'll show you how not to do it. Do it again, same thing.
I don't think that's going to work. It doesn't sound very effective. I don't know.
There's this tendency in the culture to be sort of social, and it's like you're head nodding, but you don't mean it. And so break that off. And so you do it just like, now you're on extinction for that. So you do. She can take the mic back. Thank you very much for that. Okay, now this is something that behavior analysts, there ought to be a piece of the certification exam that says demonstrate extinction. And you ought to have to bring a videotape showing that you've done this. Because as a behavior analyst, if you can't use extinction for inappropriate face-to-face behaviors, you're no good. They ought to take away your certification if you can't do that. And if you reinforce behavior that you shouldn't be reinforcing, I don't know how you sleep at night. I just don't know. Okay. All right, there's more, as we say on late night TV, but wait, there's more. Self-monitoring for people that you want to do things and they're not doing it. If you can teach them self-monitoring strategies, might be a way to do that, and then you can reinforce the correct response. We have to, these are not obviously in any kind of order. Find the reinforcer. So do a reinforcer assessment, just like you do with a kid. You do a reinforcer assessment. You got to do this with the adults. What is it that's possibly reinforcing this? And in business environments, it's a little more complicated, and it's probably mostly verbal. How to use shaping, how to use schedules reinforcement, how to use the PREMAC principle. These can all be used in business settings and organizational settings to shape behavior, particularly things like PREMAC. And DRO, I'm really fond of DRO because it doesn't have quite the bite that extinction does. I kind of like extinction because it has a nice bite to it, but you're really better off with mixing DRO and using reinforcement, which is the mix of the two. So we'll get to an example of that in a little bit. Okay. Behavioral momentum might have some applications in certain settings where you're trying to, somebody who's just not moving, they're just not moving. Behavioral momentum might be involved, like with parents who are supposed to be carrying out behavior programs, or teachers who are supposed to be carrying out behavior programs. It may be too big for them. So start with something easier, and then a little harder, and then you give them the real thing. So get some behavioral momentum going. Other kinds of consequences in environments where you could come up with, once you found the reinforcer list, make sure that those are contingent. You might be interested in timeout. You might be interested in response costs. This might work in some cases. All right, here's a client. Now this comes from this is a case that I brought before I have your cases. So I have a client who will not follow through on behavior programs. She will smile and head nod when we're discussing treatment. She looks on approvingly when I demonstrate how it's done, tries to follow my lead. But when I show up next week, the data are spotty or even made up. Her child is showing no signs of improvement. She claims she is using the treatment every day, just as we agreed. Clearly passive-aggressive behavior. It's not dangerous passive-aggressive behavior, but it's going to really slow things down, and you're going to end up spinning your wheels with this particular case. Now, this is your case. I took out mine. I put this one in. This is one from somebody, somewhere. In this room? Was somebody in here? No, somebody from somewhere else. Probably Hawaii. So here's our checklist of possible things that we could use with this particular case. And here's a possible behavior change plan for this. So for this, I would suggest we need to do an FA on the parent who's not following through. I would say she probably needs more practice. She's not getting enough reinforcement. We need to use a reinforcer assessment to try to find out what's more powerful. And we need to show her how to do self-monitoring of the procedure. So that's sort of one general approach to this. Maybe try the PREMAC principle with him. Now we're getting into your cases. Okay, here we go. So I took, I think at the last point that Kobe sent me, I had I think 27 cases from around the world. I've always wanted to say something like that. Wolf Blitzer in the United States and around the world. There seemed to be 3 relationships, and this is what I figured out by doing these sorting. I started making notes, then I went back through and I coded them, and then I put them into piles, and ta-da! In addition to the red carpet, we need some trumpets, ta-da! So this is what I've come up with. This is you, and the D is the difficult person, who could be a colleague, a client, anybody else. And what partly makes this difficult is that you have to deal with them on a regular basis. The second arrow is extremely important. It's not just what they can do to you, but because you're on a parallel plane here, it's what you can do to them. And I think people forget this. These people drive these people crazy. And you can't give up the fact that you have this control to a certain degree, the extent to which you're willing to take control. I'm going to come back and give you a good example of that here in a minute. Here's the second case. And number 1 was the majority of these. Then there was a smaller number of these. And this is you, and the difficult person is actually somebody that works for you. Or they're supposed to work for you, but they're not working for you. And it could be staff, could be employee, it could be something like that. Now, those of you who are out working with clients, I think this is the relationship as opposed to this. I don't think that your clients work for you. I think there is this give and take back and forth. But this is not an uncommon situation. And then we have the final one, which is really difficult on people. And this is where the difficult person is your boss. I don't know if we need to ask Kobe to leave the room. No, I'm sure he's a wonderful, wonderful person to work for. But if this is you, can I walk over here? I walk off the screen if I go over there? If this is you and the difficult person is up here, this is really hard. This will really make your stomach grind. This will absolutely make you take up Tums or Malox or something more powerful, because it looks as though it's a one-way situation. It looks as though you have nothing to do except take it from this person. And in some of the ones that I read, the last line was, and so after I heard this, I quit. So, that's sort of like that second category of avoid. You just quit, and that might be a good option. I mean, if it's going to help your health and so on, that might be a good idea. Okay, now let me pause for a second. This is a little commercial break for easy solutions. Those of you who are looking for quick, easy, painless solutions to your difficult behavior problems, pay close attention. I have the solution for you. It's right here. This is what you're looking for. This cures skin rot, bruises, vampire bites, excessive hair growth, tooth removal loss, headaches, deafness, and necrophilia. All of those can be cured with snake oil. It's very easy, and if you can find this, and the way you do this is you get the snake oil and you rub it on the difficult person. I think that's the best way I can think about this. It's not going to do any good to rub it on you. You've got to put it on them. And I think many people are looking for quick, easy, painless solutions. But I'm here to tell you that that's not right. That the real solution is going to be slow, it's going to be difficult, and it can be painful. So those of you who thought that this little 1-hour session was going to be how easy it is to change behavior, forget it. There's very few things in this world that are easy, and this is one of the more difficult ones. So here's what you're going to need. These are the prerequisite skills that you're going to have, and I hope everybody gets your pen out and writes these down, because this is your life. Good discipline, a strong stomach, no fear of conflict, exquisite timing. You have to be really good with your timing if you're going to do DRO or extinction on somebody. If you're going to do behavior shaping on a colleague, you really got to have your timing down right. Otherwise, you will reinforce the wrong thing. Good discipline means you're going to do it every day. You're going to take this on as a cause, and you're going to get this person to stop this. And you can't just do it every now and then when you're feeling in the mood. You got to do it every day. And you've got to have a strong stomach, because there could be some flashback that comes back to you. And you've got to be prepared to just put that on extinction as well. You have to have a Jekyll and Hyde personality. You have to be prepared to be all happy and friendly, and we're good, I like you, you're wonderful, everything's great. I said I wanted that by 5 o'clock. Like that. Oh, you did. 5 o'clock, great. That was so great. Turn it on, turn it off. People will say, well, that's not my personality. Get over it. You can have your personality some other time. When you go on a picnic, you can have your personality. But when you go to work, this is business. That's why it's business. Business is work. Work is about business. And the work of people in business settings with regard to this human behavior is you've got to work at it. And you've got to have good discipline. And finally, I have it down there last, you have to have a really good mastery of ABA techniques. You've really got to know your stuff. You can't just be sort of loosey-goosey behavior analysis, I believe in consequences. No, you've got to be hardcore. You've got to know your stuff if you're going to do this. And if you don't have all of these things, I don't know whether I would encourage you to start this project. The behavior you're dealing with is not going to go away by itself. So it's going to be you. You're going to have to do it. And you have to be prepared. You have to get ready. It's sort of like those documentaries they show where somebody's getting ready for a contest, and they show them, they put their boots up and they clank them down, and they get their weapon, and they show you all that stuff. That's you getting ready for your behavior analysis. Pull up your functional analysis. Boom, I got that. Got my reinforcer kit. Boom, I got that. You got to get ready for this. This has got to be something that you're going to do. You get ready every day to take this on. Okay. Here's one. This comes from you. This comes from a person who's a senior behavior therapist, MED in Ed Psych, 4 years experience working with children. The difficult person is a teacher, female, 35. The behavior happens in the classroom. When I first met her, she stated she doesn't like data collection. She made up her own data sheets. She didn't want to use our data sheets. She also said she doesn't want to do DTT. That is the type of classroom she's in. It's an ABA classroom. She's very resistant. She doesn't seem like she wants me in her classroom. Duh. She has taught for 15 years, but this is her first ABA experience. Now, this person doesn't work for you, so this is sort of a colleague basis. This person has this teacher, somebody else is their supervisor, but you're supposed to be in there helping this particular person. But you can see how this would drive you crazy if you're dedicated to this, because all they have to do, how easy is this? Do what I told you to do. You do that, you'll be successful. You'll be wonderful. You might not get the Nobel Prize for it, but you're going to be a very successful teacher. People are going to love you. Well, I don't like doing it that way. So you don't want to be successful? Well, I like doing things my way. No, see, that's not acceptable. You're going to have to do something. There's going to have to be something that's got to happen here. So there's the case. There's the relationship. And here's the problem. You don't really have any power with respect to this person. You're not in a position to say, I don't want to hear it anymore, do it. Because this is the teacher and you're just in the classroom. Whoops. So you may have to have some power. You may have to gain some power. This is the relationship. And you may have to get the supervisor involved. Now that's really secondary to, and I probably should have said this before I put that down there, this is really secondary to trying some behavior shaping. So behavior shaping would always come first. So you give her a little bit of something to do and you reinforce that and you reinforce that and so on. If that fails, then we would be into this. Now, watch this next effect. Is that cool? Do you know how long it took me to figure out how to do that effect? So the ultimate result is the person is not that big, huge, scary, difficult person they once were. They may not be all bubbly and say, tell me what to do, I'll change my life for you. They may not do that, but if they just comply, then you've got a foot in the door. That's mainly what you're looking for. Or think of it, if you have to think of it in terms of trying to get some power with regard to this particular person. This is a balance of power. The two of you are equal, and you can have give and take, and you can discuss things and arrive at solutions. This is unbalanced. This person is defeating you. They've got more going for themselves than you've got right now, and you need to fix this. And having the supervisor come in may be what it takes to balance it. Now, there could be other things that would take to balance it, and other people would have different approaches to this thing, and they probably wouldn't even say, oh, I'm going to take the power approach. But if you did, it would look something like that. Leverage is another way to look at this. Leverage involves finding something that you have that they need. They need something and you've got it. You know somebody at the school board. You happen to live next door to the superintendent. You play tennis with this teacher's boss. You got something. If you can get some leverage on this, you may be able to get some change made as a result of that. So there's the balanced situation. There's the unbalanced situation. Now pay close attention to the graphic. Watch this. That's what leverage does, is you move the fulcrum over and you begin to get that. And notice how this is tipped up, and now that's sort of tipped in your favor. So leverage is a solution to some of these problems. And behavior analysts, probably as graduate students, never took a course in leverage. You don't might need a whole course, maybe just a few lectures on leverage and how to get it. Now it's rebalanced. Here's another possibility. You want to be able to seek support from colleagues for dealing with this. If you can get other people involved, other people who will agree with you to start shaping on that behavior, if there are multiple people that are involved, like members of a team. If you've got somebody on a team who's really obstinate about something and kind of obnoxious and they hold everything up, you alone might not be able to produce this effect, but it may take a flash mob to do this. That would be kind of fun, wouldn't it? Instead of people all showing up at Macy's and dancing, everybody, they show up in this meeting and they all put the same behavior on extinction. Wouldn't that be totally cool? Okay, here's another case. I'm a master's level BCBA. I have 4 years experience. Got a question I'll have to deal with here in a second. 4 years experience, hard time with staff that implement programs. I work in a residential psychiatric facility. Programs are taught to the staff, but they don't implement them. Footnote, they are underpaid and worn out. Aren't we all? So this is that case 2, the relationship between you and the person. And really, there's something not quite right about a situation like that because these people work for you, theoretically. So you have some authority, but they're not coming in contact with any contingencies to maintain their behavior. I would say that's really the case in a residential psychiatric facility because the reinforcers never come immediately. If you gave them the best program in the world and they carried it out exactly, it would be days or weeks before you would begin to see the change that you're looking for. And it sort of makes sense to me that they would quit, they would give up before they would come in contact with that. So you need to sort of think outside the box. This isn't just people who are resistant. These are people who are working in an environment, and you need to re-engineer that environment. And so you may want to try using outcome measures using the Premack principle, use it, maybe set up a token economy, or think in terms of performance management. I know some of you took PM as part of your graduate training, but not everybody. And if you didn't, take a look at this book, which is really good for understanding how to manage behavior in settings where you have more than just one person who's not doing a job. If it's one person, that's a little different. You have multiple people, that's calling for PM. Okay, so questions. This all sounds great. Often these people are highly resistive. Yes. Getting them to do something like self-monitoring, controlling reinforcers, extinction, differential reinforcers. The extinction bursts could cause real problems in the workplace. How do you mitigate? You mitigate because you don't use pure extinction. You use extinction and reinforcement, otherwise known as DRO or DRI, which I like even better than DRO. In the workplace, DRI is probably the most appropriate implementation because you've got to find something that's incompatible with this. So something that's incompatible with somebody who's negative is they said something slightly positive. It doesn't have to be real positive, just slightly positive. And your job is to engineer the conversation in such a way that they will engage in something slightly positive so you can reinforce it. And I think they're probably going to be shocked when they discover that you give them a head nod or something because they said something slightly positive. Because they're a person who's negative all the time, they get a lot of negativity, and it's going to be a surprise when something positive happens to those people. The next question, I don't understand. It looks like a website address, so I don't know what that is. Okay, here's the last case. This is a behavior analyst, MS, BCBA, 30s, female, a director. Describe the setting where the difficult behavior happens. It's over the email or it's by phone. These are passive-aggressive behaviors, blaming and attacking the individual. And then there was not any no additional information about that. So another case of passive-aggressive. And here's the thing I like about this particular case, is that it happens by email and on the phone. The nice thing about that is that it gives you good control. When you're in a group setting with a bunch of people, it's hard to get good control. But when somebody is sending you negative emails, and you got DRO in mind or DRI in mind, you just don't respond to that. And it's very easy. When I respond to somebody sending me sort of a lengthy email, it's got maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs, I don't try to answer that. I say, please see my notes below. And then I go into the email, change the font color, and then I write out my response. Now, if there was, it's so easy to do shaping with this, if there was one of those things in there you didn't want to hear about, you just don't respond to that one. You just respond to the other ones. And it's amazing the kind of behavior shaping you can do on that. People do things to kind of get your goat, get your attention, to do a little on you. You just ignore that. Instead of, what do you mean? Of course I did that. You can't say, you don't play that game. You just don't do it. You don't participate in that. And if you can find something in there to reinforce, it's easy. And on the phone, it's really easy. Because here's the biggest punisher to somebody who's trying to you on the phone. I want you to listen carefully. I'm going to show you what this sounds like. It sounds like this. Nothing. If you can get the person to go, are you there? Are you there? You know you've made your point. So, quiet. Pause. Are you there? Now you change the subject. And the next thing you know, you're in charge. And this person who's always negative, they're not going to be negative anymore. Now, they may be inside a very negative person. But when they come across you, they're okay. Now, will this generalize to other people? No. Will it generalize to their families? No. Will it generalize anywhere? No. Will it work in your presence? Yes. If you can get it on the phone, you might be able to get it in person. That's really kind of a next test of generalization too. And if you can't get it automatically, your next step is face-to-face extinction like we demonstrated early on. Okay. So that's you. DRO, DRI, put your shaping skills, go to work. And remember that if this is the difficult person and they are your boss or supervisors or whatever it is, don't forget you do have this channel because you're a behavior analyst. Most people who are good at this can do it, and this person won't even know. They couldn't even identify the fact that they are the subject to a behavior plan, which I like. I like that it's kind of sub rosa. So here's your baseline. The person is blaming and attacking, and you want to use your DRO to DRI strategy, and that's what you should expect. Now, the hard part is this is data over a week or two, and this is data over 3 or 4 months. So it takes a while. And the reason it takes a while is that while you may have this person on DRO, DRI, somebody else is reinforcing it. And that's going to bleed over into your contact. But I can guarantee you this, if you do it consistently on the phone, email, face-to-face, whatever it is, in your presence, things will be different. And other people will come to you and say, I don't understand. Why does she treat you so nice? And you have to say, I don't know. Because you can't really tell them, because they'll spread it around. So, that's the last case. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for kind attention. Now, if you write down that website, baileybirch.com, and it'll take me a few days to get those filled in because I made some last minute changes and I want to put those changes in. If you go to that, baileybirch.com, go to the section called workshops, and I'll have a filled in guided notes. Yes? How about if it's your if it's your boss that has called you into your office to berate you rather aggressively over a snafu which you were not involved? I think most people would be defensive and try to, no, it wasn't me, and explain it and so on. I think I would try this. You study the carpet. You haven't studied the carpet before. This is a good day to study that carpet. Let the person blow off the steam when you can hear the steam kind of dissipating. And you look up, and then while you're looking at the carpet, think about what you're going to say. When you come up, then you can think of something constructive that will try to put this thing back on course. It's very difficult. People don't like to be put on extinction. I don't think they'll hit you. But they may go through an extinction burst. That could very easily happen. There could be some slamming of coffee mugs and that sort of thing, but that's part of the game if you're going to be effective at this. Let's see. Good one. And this will probably be the last question, I guess. Whoa, what happened to it? Are there ethical issues with using behavioral interventions on people without their knowledge? Yes, there are. And the ethical question is it ethical? And the ethical answer is yes. It is. Honest to God, the answer is yes. It's sort of like, let's say you're in a park and you have a camera and you see a cute kid. Can you take his picture? Yes. Why? Because they're out in public. You can't restrict people in public from doing that. Now, you can't climb over their fence in their backyard or take a picture through their window. You can't do that. That's unethical and illegal and so on. But if you're out in public, we can take your picture. And people don't like it and so on, but that's the way it is. Can you shape on somebody's behavior without them knowing it? The answer is yes, of course. Because it happens all the time anyway. It happens all the time. The person who, that last case, you're called into the office and you're going to be berated over something you didn't do. That person sitting behind the desk is trying to punish you. That's a behavior program they have in mind. And you're saying that you can't retaliate with a little DRO, DRI schedule? Of course you can. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now here's what you can't do. This is where the other ethical question comes up. You can't use this power. Remember we talked about this. You can't use this power that you have uniquely as a behavior analyst. You have these principles of behavior. You cannot use this to your own personal advantage. Like you could theoretically shape on a person and reinforce them in a certain way that whenever they saw you, they would reach in their pocket and they would give you dollar bills. You could shape that, and they wouldn't know why they were giving you dollar bills. But it's like, you know, I just love working with you. You're not allowed to do that. Just like I tell my students, you're not allowed, when you understand this stuff, you understand how they work, and you can do it with your dog. You can train your dog with this stuff. If you're a behavior analyst, you should have a well-trained dog. I sometimes ask all the behavior analysts that don't have well-trained dogs to put their hand up, but I've gotten so that that's so embarrassing that I don't ask that anymore. But you should. There's no excuse for it. Janet gave me a good example coming over here. Like, what if your financial planner went bankrupt? Well, that wouldn't be right. Now, what if your dentist went bankrupt? Well, what do they know about running a business? Who knows? But a financial planner can't go bankrupt. A behavior analyst can't have a dog that's out of control. Behavior analyst can't have a kid that's not a good kid. A behavior analyst can't have a spouse that's inappropriate. Not allowed. You're not allowed to do that. Well, okay, so you got the point. So behavior analysts have these tools, and you're not allowed to train your dog to bring you a beer. You need to get your own beer. It's just not right. It's humiliating to the dog to do that. You can teach them to sit and stay. That's okay. Those are good behaviors, so they don't bite the FedEx guy and all that stuff. But you can't do that. So you can't use this maliciously on people. You could, like the thing about the dollar bills, that's kind of far-fetched. But you could reinforce somebody for doing this. You could. And you could even shape it up so they were actually... You could do that. You could do that just by, oh, really? That's interesting. You could do that, but you may not do that. That would be unethical because it's not in their best interest. It's in the best interest of these D people to get better, absolutely to become a better person, and you can contribute to that. And this one question is over my head. I'm going to do the last one. What if a client is attacking you or yelling at you on the phone? Do we not say anything and then redirect the conversation even if they come back and start attacking? Yes, you do not say anything, and they may attack you again. You just have to understand that extinction will eventually work. So it's not going to work just once. So you pause, you wait till they quit attacking, you change the topic. If they attack again, pause, do it again, do it again. It'll take many times. It takes many, many repetitions to get these behaviors fixed. So I'm done. Thank you very much.